The revolution will not be televised.
The reach begins now. Energy, poverty.
Do I eat today or do I pay my electric bill?
Criminal justice reform.
They have elected and appointed more federal judges than any other administration in history.
Job creation, free speech. Breaking it all down now. Derek Holly is Reaching America.
The revolution is here.
Lamont, we're going to go to you first. There was a very, very heated conversation in the White House the other day between Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the president. A couple of weeks ago on our podcast, after the midterm elections, you said that you felt like after the Democrats had taken back over the House, that it was a good thing because it would kind of restore the balance of power between the two parties. You still feel that way?
Well, I guess to qualify that, I felt like in theory it would or should be a good thing. I think what you saw in that conversation is what couldn't have happened before.
What do you mean what couldn't have happened?
There's checks and balances. I mean, you visually saw checking and balance. You saw someone stand firm and say, no, not at this time. We're not just going to go for the okie doke.
The okie doke for the wall?
Yes, the wall is an okie doke. We're not, in this part of the conversation, we're not talking about the wall specifically.
Okay.
We're talking about, to answer your question, I think it shows you that moving forward, there's some amount of pushback that we didn't see before.
I would agree with that.
You're going to at least see pushback. You're going to see someone, kind of slap down his childish ways and be like, okay, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to, no Happy Meal tonight. We're going home because I cooked already. Whereas before you had no one speaking against. You had no one pushing back on anything that he said and not have the power to do anything about it.
I want to get Jimmy Kemp in. Jimmy, you've been a long time in politics, a long time. Your dad was in politics. What's your take on what's going on with the border and border wall security and with what happened in the White House with the president and the Democratic leaders?
I think the key point for American citizens to recognize as it relates to President Trump is that the voters chose a disruptor.
A disruptor.
A disruptor.
I've not heard that word before.
And disruption is the name of the game in technology. What are we doing right now? We're doing a podcast, right? TV effectively is dead. People watch stuff that they want to watch. Right? And I don't think that Donald Trump had some genius plan to disrupt. He just disrupted. And that's actually what happens is that people come up with ideas, they see something that works, and President Trump, when he was candidate Trump, he chose the wall, and it worked. And he has to carry through now. And so you're seeing the conversation carry through. And as long as he's loud, which he will be, on the wall, it will continue to be an issue that draws attention, that a lot of people are passionate about. It does point to a very real problem, much like his discussion on trade points to. And inside the administration, you have people who are pro-free trade, but they're supporting President Trump because he's disrupting the conversations around the global conversations around trade and reasserting America's economic strength and position.
Sure.
And so he's disrupting not only American politics, but the global dynamics. And I think that is what obviously a significant number of citizens in the United States of America who chose to vote, that's what they wanted. They care about. So those are a
disruption or is it a distraction? Because it's
a disruption to the way government works is what I would say.
Sure. Okay. Right. What classically, in a classical sense, what we're used to seeing. Right. But it's with respect to the wall specifically, it's a farce to me because his whole campaign was.
I don't think it's a farce,
build
Lamont.
the wall and Mexico is going to pay for it. So he has to now. It's more posturing than anything else because he has to stand by and make it happen, right?
But there is substance behind it because there are people who really care about the issue of people coming from other countries and coming across the border. There are a lot of people who care about that, especially in the Southwest.
There are people who are concerned with ethnic minorities and people of color coming into this country because we don't have this conversation where we talk about Europeans migrating to America for a better life. We don't have that same conversation. we have it with illegal aliens and whatever the other term that they use in the caravan. That's the only discussion. We don't see it. We put Syrian refugees on planes to come here, and there was not this much discussion. And right or wrong?
Well, the president talked about it.
Okay.
Right? He was very concerned about refugees coming. My point is that there was comprehensive immigration reform that was going through Congress. And you had Republicans and Democrats who were trying to address the complicated issues around our immigration system, which many businesses don't think is working in their best interests. Right? Many family members are frustrated with the immigration system. And our economy is so varied, and you do have such incredible global trade that the issues around immigration, like so many parts of our government, we have 20th century constructs and institutions, yet we're in the 21st century. And Congress has not been working to fix problems in a comprehensive manner. And so along comes this guy, Donald Trump, and he starts distracting, but his distractions, there's some element to them that is substantive and real, and it generates so much passion.
Sure.
And so something can ultimately get done, and he brings Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to the table, and it's going to be interesting to see what unfolds from here.
Before you go ahead, speaking to the comprehensive issues, he doesn't bring the comprehensive solution. His solution is to appeal to fear.
Oh, I totally agree.
Right.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Got it.
But he's bringing that disruptive distraction.
Right.
And frankly, I hope that now people can get so fed up with all that they will actually get something done, because every effort to have comprehensive immigration reform in the previous 10 years, it failed because our politicians they're not good at getting stuff done.
Right.
So anyway.
But the thing about it is I think we all would agree that something has to be done at the border. Lamont?
Not necessarily.
What do you mean?
Anything different than what's being done now? If you go down there, there is a wall.
There's not a wall.
There has been a wall.
No, it's not.
It's just we need more money to do other
I actually
things.
saw they had a supervisor of one of the border patrol. She was a female, and she talked about this wall. And it's not just a wall like they're building on 210, just a concrete wall.
Right.
But apparently this wall has technology.
Yes.
Technology built into it. Also, this wall apparently goes underground so you can't dig under it.
Okay.
So the technology with this wall is supposed to have technology where you can continue to add to it and enhancing this wall for national security and the border protection.
When we talk about that, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm saying, right now, with the amount of people that's entering down there, you can't tell me you're going to take tens of thousands of people in every single day. Or let's call it 2,000 people every single day for the next year. How many people is that?
What have we been doing for the last 20 years?
We ain't been taking that many people in.
You think we're going to, it's going to increase, and that's the numbers that we're going to
I think the numbers would decline if there was some type of security out there. I do.
There is some type of security,
not all the way.
Aren't there. There's a ton of documentaries. I can name you at least 3 documentaries where you watch where they show the process of what's been going on and how there are parts that need to be improved. Right?
That's all I'm saying.
Sure. I mean, there's one gaping hole in this part.
There's several gaping holes.
Drug mules, but you're talking creating some sort of Great Wall of China from the Pacific Ocean to the.
No.
What do you mean? A continuous wall?
It needs to be. There are areas that have natural barriers and boundaries and stuff like that, but there still needs to be something that goes up.
Your guy wants a continuous build.
My guy, right? I see how you talking over here.
He wants a continuous build because it's jobs. It's going to jobs.
That's a horrible impression. You got to work on that.
Jobs.
Come on.
from the Pacific to the Gulf, and like a continuous build. Like what? That's not going to stop the things that we all.
So then, Lamar, you think this is just in theory? He's got to live up to a campaign promise.
Absolutely.
You don't think that we need any kind of border security?
Not in the way that it's being marketed, if you will.
Okay.
And Mexico, it's not going to pay for it. But he had y'all believe in that. He would. I mean, okay, not you. But he had, like it was phrased. Jimmy phrased it. Can I call you Jimmy?
Oh, yeah.
Phrased it. The people that voted for him.
It was disruptive,
right? I don't know about disruptive though. Disruptive is so. That's more of like a salute. That like I intended to. There was no intention.
No, he did. He totally had. Once he recognized that there was a lot of people who were passionate, who would come out, people who didn't typically vote, who would come out and vote if he made the wall the thing.
Okay.
Right? I mean, why did so many people come to those rallies? They couldn't wait until he started the wall chant, build the wall. Now, look, here's what bothers me about this issue. At the Jack Kemp Foundation, our mission is to advance the American idea. And at the root of the American idea, I believe that our country was founded on principles that adhere to the human idea. Every human has inalienable rights. That's something that resonates across the globe with any person who hears it, right? And in this country, that's what we aspired to. Mm-hmm. And we haven't achieved it. And certainly our history has been a lot of examples of falling short of what the country was set up to do. Mm-hmm. What bothers me about the whole immigration discussion is that it gets to the point that you were talking about, how there's not the conversation about people who are coming from white countries, right? Mm-hmm. And this country is great, not because we came from Europe or whatever other way you want to describe it. This country is great because we are e pluribus unum, out of many one. That's the aspiration. That's what we're supposed to be shooting for. And I disagree with President Trump's rhetoric significantly because he doesn't explain the way that immigration should work. We need an immigration system. We should welcome people to this country and welcome them to adhere to those ideals.
I don't think he knows how to explain it.
I agree with you.
And the reason why I say that is because there's a certain level of language that he's used to using.
He knows what works.
He knows what works.
He knows what works. And so that's why I call it disruptive. And none of the candidates who think about tying immigration policy back to our founding principles, none of them can hook people quickly enough to get them to say, yeah, that's it.
Well, you can't have that conversation
challenge.
because you lose credibility. Because our founders, if you want to go back to the founders, they were immigrants.
You're
illegal.
Right.
So you can't really have that conversation and without.
Well, they weren't illegal because there weren't laws.
There was no laws back then.
Sure, there were laws.
There wasn't laws when they first came over here.
There was a whole millions of people that had a sovereign nation here. How do we remove that from the historical context?
Right. We're going down the road. No. Look, we can talk about it. That's a different conversation.
Sure.
But it's the same. This was not a sovereign nation. You had a bunch of tribes, right? Who had been here for hundreds of years, thousands of years.
But they had laws. They had a system of government.
Oh, yeah,
it was a sovereign, not in the classical sense of what we know sovereign to be.
And they bumped up against each other.
Sure.
And there was not some international law. And
did it need to be?
Well, I would say.
If I come to your house and say, think about it though. No,
that's where this conversation goes.
Exactly. That's why it
to those fundamentals.
Exactly. And that's why it's hard. It becomes a challenge to have the conversation and go that far back.
It's Reaching America on Demand.
We reach it.
We reaching this great show. It's Lamont King and Jimmy Kemp from the Jack Kemp Foundation. He explained to you what the Jack Kemp Foundation, what it stands for. But I don't know if you knew this, but Jimmy also spent 8 seasons as a quarterback in the Canadian Football League.
Awesome.
Finishing his career in 2001 with the Toronto.
My career's not finished. I'm still waiting. I never retired.
And you can tell he look like he can play a little bit.
Thank you.
And Jimmy also was the founding board chairman for the Hope Community Charter School, which is located right here in Northeast Washington, D.C. Yep. And we appreciate you being here offering this insight. And especially, that was a very good discussion we just talked about with the border. But I want to get into Michael Cohen real quick. Just what happened with him last week, with him being handed down a 3-year sentence for campaign finance violations in regards to hush money being paid to these two women. And also, they said he misled Congress in terms of what he knew and what he stated what the president was doing in Russia, with apparently trying to do a deal with the Trump Tower. So my question, I'll go to you, Jimmy.
Great.
First.
This is what I want to talk about.
Because we went to Lamont, and we're going to move on after this, so we're going to get to the good stuff. But what do you think is going to happen? I know what I think is going to happen. Okay. What do you think will happen as a result of this stuff right here?
I just think answer. I don't know.
I think he's going to. I really think when it comes down to it, you look at all this campaign financing. Here's the question I have. Maybe it's a dumb question. Many have said that the president financed his own campaign, so it's his money. I also think, the president is some of the things his rhetoric, as crazy as it may sound, I don't think he's stupid. Y'all might disagree with me. And I think he had enough people. I just can't imagine him. Here's my quote. I just can't imagine him paying money to these ladies out of the same pot of money that he's supposed to be running his campaign. I just don't imagine being that stupid.
Well, the first thing that you said,
especially when you got a pot of money, you got dough in here, in this account, in this account, in this account. I'm gonna take the money from this account right here. I don't think that I'm that stupid to pay this chick.
But didn't he
with the campaign finance money?
He paid for his campaign.
And is the one and the same, or is it different?
Wasn't it a loan against his own money? Like he borrowed from himself.
So if it's his money, right?
So I'm thinking if you know that much, you know what you can and can't get away with.
I don't know if he did or not.
So
that's what Michael Cohen was supposed to be doing for.
Yeah, that's the one thing I would say is that Michael Cohen did not serve his client well
in his best interest.
But frankly, this conversation doesn't interest me because I don't know campaign finance law well enough. And John Edwards had something kind of similar,
right? And it turned used as a precedent.
And there are campaign finance violations from not every single campaign, but from many, many campaigns. The laws are, the lawyers are supposed to, what Michael Cohen should have done is had a campaign finance lawyer hired and said, okay, tell the candidate what he can and can't do. I don't know if that happened or not, but anyway, I don't have much else to say. I certainly can't predict what's gonna happen next.
No one knows, but the man, he's escaped all this stuff. He got 9 lies, 12 lies probably. So I don't know what's
Cohen or the president.
The president.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That's what I'm like.
I don't in this regard. I don't think it's going to go any farther than what you see now. Right.
That's what I think.
Because as amazing as it is, and as earth shattering as it is, people still are not worked up about it. Like this man is. I heard a soundbite yesterday. Cohen is like, no, he told me what to do. He directly directed me to do it, and you still don't see the type of response or reaction that you would had it been anybody else.
Yeah,
I don't think you are. So it is.
I just wouldn't get on a plane with him. Wouldn't catch a train with him.
You know what,
Cohen? I wish him the best.
I think a part of the reason why the president got elected is because he's authentically inauthentic. Voters were looking for authenticity.
Yeah,
they want somebody who that person is going to tell me the way it really is.
Right.
And the president, the candidate, then you could see he wasn't reading a text. That's the disruption that I'm talking about.
Right.
Is that he puts his reality TV persona right in front of everybody and says, "This is who I am," and I'm gonna get deals for us.
Well, the danger. What I saw yesterday. The danger to that authenticity is rarely seen in politics because there's a certain
of all
amount
this legal stuff.
Well, yeah, but there's a certain amount of decorum that you should have as a politician. Hence the word politician. So he says yesterday at the end of his statement, "I don't know what he did because he's a lawyer. And you know how lawyers do." Now, anybody else, that would be seen as an attack on lawyers. So when they start shooting up law firms, they would blame the person that said it. But him, he just says it and keeps moving, and we all just turn a blind eye to it.
He's the president.
I don't know about a blind eye. I think people are paying attention to it.
Sure.
But it's to me that's the disruption, and there's plenty of distraction that goes along with it. And I think, for example, Cohen is distracting many people from, at the event where we were, there was a press event, and it was all about this opportunity zone law and work that the agencies are going to be doing. And as soon as the remarks were over,
yep,
the questions that came firing from the press section were all about Cohen.
Right. There was nothing about.
There's no interest in this very real thing.
Right.
And so that distraction, it both helps and hurts. It's a strange place that we are in our American politics. But I think it's around the globe as well. I think we just need to get things on the table and be able to better talk about whatever people want to talk about, which is what you're doing.
Right. And so to that point, you talked about us being at the White House last week for the roundtable discussion. And so much of what the president does, it does take away from some of the good things that they do in the administration. And some people will say there ain't nothing that he does good in administration. I would say say differently to that, and I will talk about what happened on last week when we attended to the White House where he established the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. And also what this did was established opportunity zones. And Jim, we especially thank you for being here today because your father, Jack Kemp, set up years ago or outlined enterprise zones, which are very similar to what the president and administration is doing right now with opportunity zones. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So just a quick background on Jack Kemp. I fully realize that lots of people don't remember him. My dad passed away in 2009. He most wanted to be remembered as a quarterback in the NFL. He played for the Buffalo Bills for 6 years, and they won back-to-back championships. That's before the Super Bowl happened. Everybody knows the Bills haven't won a Super Bowl. They lost 4 in a row. But after he was playing football, he was a congressman from Buffalo. And while he was a congressman, he realized that Bethlehem Steel, a steel company in Buffalo, New York, was dying. And he felt like it was on his watch. And he recognized that there needed to be incentives for people to invest in communities that are, in today's language that we're using, distressed communities. Yeah. And where Bethlehem Steel was in Buffalo, a bunch of steel workers, they were losing their jobs left and right because when Bethlehem Steel closed, it was a very depressing factor in the decline of Buffalo. Today, Buffalo is coming back. Many cities are coming back in our industrial Midwest. You got Detroit starting to come back. Cleveland is coming back. You see progress in cities, but it's not equitable progress. And we've seen it here in D.C. And one of the things that we focus on at the Kemp Foundation is equality of opportunity. That's a part of the American idea that the condition of your birth should not, in this country or any other country, but that's what this country is based on, that the condition of your birth should not determine the outcome of your life.
And the president actually said something at the White House the other day. He said just because of the zip code, because of the zip code you were born should not impact your life, the rest of your life.
Well, and I think that's true. I think we all recognize that there are many factors that impact our lives, right? And it's important to understand, study those. And in this country, we're the wealthiest country in the world, and we should be much better at providing equality of opportunity. Now, it would be great if we could provide equality of outcome for everybody, right? Let's say we all agreed that everybody should just deserve $100,000 a year, right? And everybody should be able to live a decent lifestyle. Well, we all know that there are people who would throw that away, right? And that's not the way the world works. I don't understand why God created us this way, but He created people with very different talents. And talent levels. Clearly, I wasn't good enough to make it to the NFL like my brother and my dad. But I had the opportunity, football's a great example for me. Before the Mannings, Archie, Peyton, and Eli, the Kemps were the first father to son professional quarterback combination.
Oh, nice.
But nobody ever heard of us. Right. The Mannings have done a little bit better. But football's a great example. I had every advantage I could possibly have in football, right? But the great thing about it is that I had to earn it. There was no coach who was going to put me out there if I was going to fumble every snap, right? I had to learn the skills myself. And I've never been, people often ask me, oh, you know, your dad was famous when you were growing up. Was that hard for you? Oh, were you kidding me? I learned quickly that whatever advantages we have, you have to add work to those advantages. Now, whatever disadvantages we have in life, you have to add work to those. And so in this country, your zip code, it's going to impact you, yes, but it should not be determinative of what your outcome is. So my dad came up with this idea, enterprise zones, to help rebuild Buffalo and other poor cities. And his idea was, our tax code is so complicated, and there's something called capital gains tax. And if you're an investor and you make money on one of your investments, now your money that you invested in Derek's company, right? I've already been taxed on the money that I put into you, all right? Okay, so I've already been taxed on this money. I invested in you, and you make me money because you're good at what you do.
That's right.
All right, now I want to sell my investment in you because I invested $100 and now I've got $200. That's $100 capital gain, and the government, they want to tax my money again. Right. All right? So they already taxed my income. Now they're going to tax my investment profit, and that's called capital gains. They tax that $100 that I made with Derek Holly, and they want to, on $100, they want $24. It's 24%. Now the capital gains tax, which is double taxation, my dad's idea was to go into poor communities, where there was often racial prejudice because banks would draw red lines on the maps. It was called redlining in the 70s and 80s. And banks would draw red lines and say, don't lend here. Wow. And they had excuses for it, but a significant part of it was racial prejudice. And Dad said, I've got an idea. Let's not try to fix all that. Let's not try to dig into it. Let's just have the federal government, have the Treasury Department green line those redlined areas and tell any investor that if you invest in this now green-lined area, formerly red-lined area, your capital gains tax will be 0% if you make money in this area. All right? So unleash free market. Some people call it greed. I call it incentive to make money. And that was the enterprise zone concept. It never passed into law. Bill Clinton took the idea and he turned it into empowerment zones, which is the government giving tax credits to people if the people in those green-lined areas do what the government tells them to do. I think that picks winners and losers. Opportunity zones is a step away from tax credits back to zeroing out the capital gains tax. And so opportunity zones provide investors the opportunity to pay 0% capital gains if they invest in now these distressed communities that have been identified by every governor, and you hold your investment for 10 years. So the government, they are requiring something. You have to hold your investment. You have to be in it for the long term. So that's supposed to kind of curb people's greed while keeping the incentive. So Opportunity zones passed in the December 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And importantly, this was a bipartisan bill sponsored by African-American Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina and African-American Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. They teamed up on the Investing in Opportunity Act. And because of Charlottesville, that bill got added to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and I can explain that. But those are the basics on opportunity zones, so and I need a drink.
My first question. Now, that was a great explanation because you went from what was it called?
Enterprise zones.
So you had enterprise zones, empowerment zones, and now opportunity zone. And what you see is a pattern of different people hijacking a good idea, right? Or trying to make it better, or at least put it at work, right? Sure. So that's great stuff right there. My question would be, in just listening to that explanation, how then are those investors who decide to go into those hypothetical green zones chosen or selected? Like, what's that process? How is it?
Any of us. If we got a little cash burning a hole in our pocket, I don't know if y'all do. I don't right now. But if I do, the three of us, we can set up the Three Amigos LLC.
Take some notes to this show, man. There's opportunities out there for folks.
All we have to do is set up an LLC.
Yeah.
And now we can take the profits that we pool together, and we can invest them inside here in DC. It's in Anacostia. I mean, they're all over. I think there are like 35 opportunities.
But even still, I would be at a disadvantage to someone, some capital funding source, or somebody who has a history of investing or starting businesses. I would be at a disadvantage with no history of starting a business or operating.
If you're the entrepreneur,
yes.
If you're trying to attract investment,
right. Yeah.
So if you're trying to attract investment, all right, and you have an opportunity right now because you are in the opportunity zone already, and the investors have got to come find good deals.
Right.
So the spotlight is now on these opportunity zones. Are you assured to receive investment? Hell no. You got to convince an investor to put money with you. You have to tell them, I'm going to make you money. All right. So the thing is that it's rewarding that which we want, which is people to do the things that are in their minds. I've got a great idea. I want to bust my butt on this. And you have to be willing to fail. In this country is built on failure. All right. People came here because they wanted an opportunity. They wanted to figure, hey, I'm going to do that. Oh, that didn't work. So they do something else, right? But you figure it out. And as long as we're moving forward in this country, then you have people who are being good to one another. I got to be good to you because I don't know when it's going to come back around on me. I want to do business with you. We want people to be working, and when you grow up in some of the zip codes that have been targeted with these in these distressed communities, there's not you don't believe people don't have faith in the system.
No.
Right?
That's exactly what this is.
And so we're trying to make the system more responsive.
Right.
I'm not saying this is a panacea.
Sure. I guess my question is coming from a place of I'm a resident or a business owner in this community, right? And so I understand that with the new opportunity zones, investors are coming in, and whatever they make is zero tax. How do I go from not being exploited by this now new pool of investors who want to come in with $1 million development and build, and they're not being taxed on their money, so their connection it's almost like free money for them.
So first of all, it's their money.
Their capital gain.
First of all, it's their money already. They've already been taxed on it. All right. So any investor has already been taxed on the money that he or she would invest in you.
Okay.
All right. So I've already been taxed. So my preference is that there wouldn't be any capital gains tax. I don't think that there should be capital gains tax. All right. I think we need a much simpler, fairer tax system. It's too complicated. There's too much. I got to hire an accountant.
Right. Just to understand it.
You're right.
Yeah.
But anyway, that being what it is, that creates this incentive for people to put their money in. And it's not free money. It's their money. They work their tail off for it. Unless you're somebody who thinks that anybody who has made money hasn't earned it. Right. I'm not one of those people. I give respect to people who have made money. Right. It doesn't mean they're a perfect person, but the onus is on you to pitch the idea, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
And now somebody's betting on you. You want people to bet on you, and right now there aren't enough people betting.
So as an entrepreneur or businessman, I'm still trying to secure you to want to invest in me. I'm still trying to secure funding. And okay, I get it.
Yeah, but the bigger thing is, and I think I thought that's where you were going to go with it was, and we talked about it. Van and I actually brought it up in the meeting in terms of just doing some outreach.
Nobody knows who Van is. Who are you talking about?
Van Jones from CNN. He was at the meeting. I'm sorry, Van Jones. So anyway, Van was actually supporting this idea. Interesting enough. And speaking to Van, he's like, when the president does wrong, I tell him that he's wrong. But when the president does right, I'm going to let people know that he's doing something right. And he felt like this program right here is something right. But the one thing that we talked about was the need to do some outreach to these communities, not just to the business owners, to let them know that this opportunity exists and what you have to do to take part of it, but also the residents.
Right.
So they know what's going on in there, so they don't feel like, all of a sudden now it's gentrification.
Right.
And they're taking over my community.
Right.
And so the administration has done right now a series of opportunity zone tours where they're going into these different areas. They said they're going to continue this. I want to be a part of it too. Where they're going into these areas, talking to these residents, letting them know about opportunity zones, letting them know what's about to take place in the neighborhood, and getting their feedback as to what they need in these communities.
Well, and to that point, you brought up gentrification. I didn't this
No,
time.
but it is.
No, what I'm saying is, so then it's a matter of timing, opticals. I mean, the optics of it is it's a matter of timing, right? You're going to now create these opportunities in these places where the residency has switched. Like, where was that before?
What do you mean? The residency has switched.
Well, the city looks different.
But
And a lot of these areas that are distressed, in 5 years, 5, 7, 10 years, they will not be. But not because of it being designated as opportunity.
Well, but the opportunity zone, it ends December 2019.
Oh, it's just a 2-year situation?
Now it's a 1 year.
It's a 1 year.
Okay.
It's a 1 year situation. So,
But I guess my position on that is I always go downtown and I see or these areas of town where it's heavy police presence, right? And protecting what would look like the new residents. And the question always from the native population is, where were y'all when we lived here? Like, why couldn't we get these same top level services and attention back then? So I say that to say, the optics of this could look like that it could be tied into the discussion of gentrification, which everybody hates and nobody likes to talk about, right? Because they don't understand it. But why now? How is this something where...
What do you mean, why now?
No. I think it's a great endeavor. I'm saying, what took so long?
Oh, because, well...
I'll let you answer it, but I'm thinking, why did the other administration... I think the president saw this as an opportunity and took advantage of it.
Here's the context that I would put on it. All right,
Okay.
Here's what bugs me: the Republican Party, all right, which is basically comprised of conservatives and mostly white conservatives. Right? The Republican Party.
He said mostly.
Yeah, I know.
The Republican Party moved away from its great history on race.
Yes.
Right. In the 40s, 50s, 60s, and certainly with the Civil Rights Act, that happened. The natural home, in my opinion, politically, for minorities, for African Americans, is the Republican Party. Because anybody who believes that they should be the determinant of their future, that they want to raise their family and that they have rights, the conservative principles are the principles that are best applied to any minority group, because the left, if you're a liberal or a Democrat, and this gets to answer your question, why it didn't happen before, they believe that answers don't come from people. They believe in they believe in the stratification of society, in identity politics, that's the thing that should matter most. And government can fix that best. I'm sorry, government is not good at fixing a lot of the sociological problems that exist. Those answers come from the community. They come from the people, right? And so the left and Democrats, when they went to empowerment zones, Bill Clinton explicitly moved from Kemp's free market idea, which I think was better for minorities and poor folks in those communities. Bill Clinton said, "Oh no, we know what to do. Government is going to tell folks what behavior we want, and that's going to fix the problem." Now, Harlem did improve. Empowerment zones were put into place in Harlem, and Harlem did improve. You also have had gentrification there, and government picking winners and losers. To me, that's a left-leaning Democrat idea. It's not a conservative Republican idea where we want the markets. Good to see you, Ryan.
Right, RNC, baby. DJ Iron. DJ Iron.
So I think Democrats should have done this much sooner, but they don't, because they want government to control things.
Let me ask you a question, and Jimmy, to that point. All right, so
I got him he didn't answer.
No, I mean,
I got him thinking at least.
I'm taking it in. I'm taking it in.
He thinks a lot, so that's why we definitely.
I guess if I had to respond, I wouldn't.
You don't have to.
The blanket nature of that, I don't know if I would agree with it all.
I'm not trying to say it's everybody.
Right.
I'm saying what the conservative movement should be about.
I get where you're going.
And what the Democrats have been about, I think the Democrats are about big government solutions. Trust the government.
And I'm not a Democrat, by the way. I'm just a student of the game.
I think more and more people are like you because they see that the parties have not brought solutions.
Right. And to that point, I was going to ask you, Jimmy, just growing up in politics with your dad and everything, do you agree with this theory that people say, I've heard it many times recently, politicians' first job is to get elected, and then the second job is to
stay elected.
Stay elected or get reelected, and solving our problems is a distant third, fourth. Is that true? Huh?
Of course, that's not the way it should be.
I know, but would you agree with, in theory, that it's that way?
Look, I think there are great podcasts. I think there are bad podcasts. I think there are great football players. There are bad ones. I think there are great politicians. I think there are some bad ones. There are some people who are in public service for the right reasons, and you find them at every level of government. You go into your local neighborhood commission. In my neighborhood, it's the ANC. There are people there who are doing for no money. They're not trying to, they just care about their community. There are also some people who you think, what on earth are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to be the most powerful person in this neighborhood and nobody pays attention to you anyway. That happens at every level of government. It's human nature. And I want people to understand human nature and recognize that just because you're a Republican doesn't make you a good person. Just because you're a Republican doesn't make you a bad person, right? People, we are either good to other people or not. And sometimes we're both. Just talk to my wife, right? So I think that happens, Derek. And I think there's a lot of pressure from political parties. Now, part of the problem with the party system is that they want that to be the motivation for their candidates, because all that matters to them is, do we have the majority? Right? So they're going to push candidates and fund candidates in that direction. But the voters, I still think we do have the power. We, the people, we've got to vote, and we have to find out the people who are just in it because of what the party's telling them to do. So they can, you got to.
But I feel like that's the majority.
So Jimmy, are we stuck for the next 2 years? Are we stuck right now with the next, just based off of what we saw in the White House earlier this week?
When you say stuck, what do you mean?
Just in terms of not being able to get anything done in our government, just because people are so disenfranchised with President Trump.
Are you surprised though? We saw the same thing with the previous shutdown, where I'm going to block everything he does. That's the verbiage. Like, you know what I mean?
Which is wrong.
And was the shutdown with was it Ryan when it was like 11 days or? In 20
Boehner.
Boehner, that's the one. He disappeared. Where is he?
He's at a law firm doing pretty well.
Oh, really?
So he's all with
but if you remember,
now.
it was the same game, right? And the two-party system, that's what you're faced with. It's the same game. So we're looking at it now, but it doesn't feel good because you're on the other side, and you're like, there's some things on the table here that we could use to make progress, and blah 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 and blah blah blah. It just looks different, but it's the same. It's the same game.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on, though, and before we get out of here, and this is a piece of legislation that could help some blacks, and that's the First Step Act.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things happened last week.
A lot of people in prison.
It's going to help a lot
Not
of people.
just
but
blacks.
But it will help a lot of blacks because they're disproportionately impacted. That's the reason why I said it, Lamar. But you're right. It's going to help.
I was just making fun of the way you said it.
More white folks than it will
I'm
blacks.
glad you're making fun of him.
But the thing about it is, I would say that it kind of got lost.
Yeah, of course.
This week with Cohen and all the other stuff, the distraction. The same thing with the Opportunity Zone thing got lost. It got lost.
It's not juicy.
And they're supposed to vote on that today, and it could be very, very helpful for a lot of people. So I hope it does get passed. It'll be a huge piece of legislation passed with the president.
So that just speaks to the fact that there are things getting done. Yeah. The administration, look, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. He can't tell everybody in every single agency what to do. He puts his secretaries there, and then the secretaries have deputy secretaries. I mean, our government is huge. There's a lot going on. Some of it good, some of it bad. We need to pay attention. And in Congress, there are some things that can get done because they're conscious that their approval rating is through the floor.
Sure.
And when you have divided government, frankly, that brings people to the table a little bit more than when you just have one side who's not in power and they're saying no, 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 right?
And it forces you to work as well. And you saw with the midterm elections that you can't just rest where you're at. So the whole thing about, one job is to get elected, the next job is to stay elected. It could be gone so fast that it forces you to do the work.
Yeah.
So
it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So we're about to wrap the show up. Jimmy, before we get out of here, you being former, professional quarterback, dad played and everything. We're right here in the nation's capital, and our Washington football team is struggling.
Yeah.
What's the problem? What's the problem? Year after year after year. And I put it in the article. I said, is there a curse on the Redskins? Is it, or is it just the coaching, the ownership? What is it that makes the franchise unsuccessful?
Look, I think leadership matters in every institution around, and there's no doubt that Dan Snyder wants the team to be successful.
Does he?
Absolutely. Absolutely, he wants it to be successful.
What? I just can look at a lot of the things that they do, and they're just bad decisions.
Well, but you can look at any institution and from the outside say that's a bad decision. And in retrospect, all of us are brilliant general managers or anything else. I think you've seen an evolution over the years, and I think he's still trying to figure it out. Spends a lot of money, wants to make a lot of money with the Redskins, and he wants the team to be great. I played with Jay Gruden in 1995. Jay was a really good quarterback. He doesn't look like much, and he didn't look like much back then. But Jay is a player, and Jay he's figuring this is his first coaching job. He's hungry. I hope they make it. I hope they come back to DC and have figure something out where RFK is. And you want this football team to be what it should be. I think it can be. I think leadership matters, and I'm sure that they're going to be reviewing everything. And it's just like, that's the great thing about football. You can watch the game film and see who did what. And I think that type of analysis needs to happen all the way up the chain. And I believe they're doing it. I hope they're doing it.
Jimmy, as a former quarterback, Colin Kaepernick, that whole situation. What's your take on that? Is he good enough to play? Should he have been brought here or at least given an opportunity?
Of course he's good enough to play.
Okay.
I think the issue of police community relations is a critical one, and Colin Kaepernick bringing it up, he should not have been sent out of the league for it. He shouldn't have been banished. I do think that in any profession, there's a way to handle oneself, and especially as a quarterback, you've got to be the quarterback for the whole team. It doesn't mean that you have to not say what you think. Here's an example. First of all, can Colin Kaepernick play? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he can play.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. I think part of the reason he hasn't, I don't think when you wear socks that have cops pictures as
pigs or something like that.
I think that type of thing distracts from the team. And I don't know the ins and outs. I've been on a lot of teams. I've seen a lot of disruptive players. Colin he does not seem like a disruptive guy personality wise, but he chose to do something that is disruptive. I'm not saying it's right, but I think teams make more than they make decisions based on more than simply talent. And I think he's a victim of that.
Definitely a victim, because to me, it wasn't a disruption, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you've had players that have done that before, for other reasons.
Who, like Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf?
Absolutely, and he got exiled out of pro sports as well eventually. But I feel like from a standpoint of bringing attention to an issue, like if you have that platform, historically, that's never been frowned upon. But I think, again, it goes back to bringing attention to a discussion that nobody is ready to have.
I think there are a lot of people who are ready to have it. We've done Kemp Forum events on police community relations. Right. I think
on a national level, I'll qualify.
Well, I think the Players Coalition, in the wake of the Kaepernick thing, and Quan Bolden and Malcolm Jenkins, they set up the Players Coalition outside of the NFLPA and they said, we want to talk about issues including police community relations, but we want to talk about education, criminal justice reform. And the Players Coalition is going around having conversations with a bunch of folks.
But then once they took the payoff, it was no longer
done.
a discussion.
I think that's, forgive the use of the term, I think that's fake news. I don't think that's true. I think that there's not a payoff. They didn't get paid. Nobody made money on this. They have money that they are applying to the discussions, and you may not see the full impact because, frankly, it's not that much money. What was it, $100 million maybe?
Yeah, it was $100 million. And it came out to like less than $2 million per team when they spread it out over the 10-year period, something like that.
Right. So it's not. I mean,
well, I say payoff because if you tell me, all right, I get it, we hear you. We'll get this money and give it to you for awareness and outreach and all that. Just stop what you're doing. And then you stop what you're doing, then that's a payoff.
But the NFL mismanaged that whole situation from the jump. And I think I don't remember all the ins and outs with the Niners and how they handled it and the NFL, but clearly they didn't think that President Trump was going to get elected and call all the players sons of bitches.
These assholes.
Which just inflamed it and made it all worse.
Right.
And Trump is not the best guy on helping people deal with race relations.
No, never has been.
And so that's really unfortunate because we do need to have a national conversation on this. That's part of the reason why I love Tim Scott so much, and I'm glad that President Trump has reached out to Tim Scott, and Tim Scott is the reason that opportunity zones were created. So, look, there's a lot more going on under the surface than just the headlines that we see.
Sure.
And so I think, especially on an issue like race, I think it's really important for people who care about it to engage a little bit more deeply in the conversation than, oh yeah, it's wrong that Colin Kaepernick, there's a lot more to it than just the things that we see on the surface. Right. It doesn't mean that he should be out of the league. I don't think that's right, but there's more to the discussion.
Yeah.
Good deal. Great discussion, great conversation.
Part 2 next week.
Part 2. So, Lamont, we're going to wrap this thing up. You got anything you want to share before we get out of here?
Man, not that I want to shout out. Yeah. Well, I want to shout out, did a holiday party, JMA Solutions, Jan Adams' company. She's a government contractor with a historic and legendary operation over there. One of the first.
In Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they had a holiday party, and it was at the Mandarin, and I did comedy in front of about 400 people.
Okay. You turned it out?
I did what I could.
You made it do what it do?
Corporate comedy.
You made it do what it do easy?
Corporate comedy is my lane right now.
Corporate comedy.
Well,
I had never heard that term. Corporate comedy.
That's huge. Where the money is.
That's
He's an entrepreneur.
Oh,
that's
corporate
where the
comedy
money is.
Okay.
Because they say, well, what's your rate? And this is my rate. Okay. you go to the club.
Business isn't bad, is it?
You go to the club. It's like we might could do $100.
Okay,
nah.
okay. Got it. Good deal. And he's now an expert.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay.
I'll tell you, I got to add that to my, see if I can get my blue check.
Jimmy, got anything you want to add?
Well, jackkempfoundation.org is our website, and if anybody has ideas, businesses, there are investors looking for deal flow. If you wonder where an opportunity zone is, just Google whatever state you're in and opportunity zones. There will be a map which will tell you whether or not you're in an opportunity zone, and be in touch with us.
Yeah, and that would be my message too. This opportunity zone that was created is going to create, no pun intended, opportunities for some people. But you've got to be aware. You've got to do your homework, do some due diligence. Just go and take a look at what's going on and see that there could be something there for you. And I know a lot of times we think that this president, this administration, with all the rhetoric that he talks about, there's nothing positive for us, for blacks, for anybody. But this opportunity zone could be certainly something special for a lot of people. So that's our show. It's Reaching America on Demand. I thank you, Easy.
Good job, Easy.
Thank you, Lamont.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Lisa. That's our show, and we are out.